Welcome to my presentation showing you the most recent polls in all the battleground states and also reviewing some of the most recent updates in this election. We are going to be operating off of this map. As you can see, we got the majority of the electoral votes and or states already filled in. Question is, let's save you some time. So let's get right into the states that matter. As you guys can see, we're going to do New York first. And what you'll notice right off the bat is that it's polling really harshly for Joe Biden as of about 2 weeks ago, where his approval was actually not as bad, and this was about in lieu of the whole debacle with the verdict. We do see that Joe Biden is losing to Donald Trump in a 1v1 by about 10 percentage points, and in the most recent polling again 2 weeks ago, we see that Joe Biden's winning by a mere 7 once we include other candidates such as RFK and Cornel West, Jill Stein as well. And so while it is a blue state, I will say that it might be in the territory where it's under the double-digit threshold, which is somewhat magical. We have some very fresh polling out of the state of Florida with its 30 electoral votes. Ostensibly, we do have over 1,000 people by the Tyson group being polled, and you'll notice that they actually answer to the affirmative that Donald Trump will be the winner of this poll by about 10 percentage points. What's more is that when you do other polls down ballot, it all kind of co-aligns and kind of shows that Trump is headed for a victory bigger than 2020, and moreover, we do have a safe margin. So, in fact, New York will be less Democrat than Florida is Republican, according to the most recent polling, which is somewhat crazy. But nevertheless, Joe Biden's approval rating is at 37%, the lowest it's ever been. As you guys might have noticed, Trump has not really spent a lot of money in Ohio like he did in 2016 or even 2020 when he won it by about 10 percentage points. Answer is, well, look at the poll. As of less than a week ago, June 6th, you'll notice that Marist College, with the big poll, has Trump up by 7. This is including, obviously, third-party candidates, which is realistic. And in reality, Kennedy getting about a 5 percentage point aggregate is pretty normal in the state of Ohio. And so this is really indicative of a strong win for Trump in Ohio. Anyway, the polling as of recently has gotten better in regards to funding for it. That whole industry in New Hampshire, where, again, that was a close state in 2016, went crazily left for Biden. In fact, got like 7 points more Democrat from 2016 to 2020. Now in 2024, we do have the polls showing a different story. We have a different story, as in, of course, Biden's winning by about 4 against Donald Trump 1v1. And so again, Trump could win the election and lose New Hampshire, which goes in line more or less with the trend from 16 to 20. So that all checks out. Okay, so people in New Hampshire are voting Democrat according to the latest polling. Bleeding edge polling. As we see, the race has a new turning point. As we can see that post-conviction, Trump is stronger than ever in the polls. We see that they're now actually investing in states that they thought were safe for Biden. In this case, we do have a multi-candidate race going on in by Mason-Dixon polling in around Minneapolis and Minnesota. You'll see right now that Joe Biden is leading Trump by a mere 4 percentage points, which in 2020 was a way harsher story for Republicans. Again, Trump narrowly lost the state in 2016, but in 2020, it went way to the left, kind of like New Hampshire. Point being is that for it to be this close is actually a great sign, because had Trump only lost Minnesota by 4, you extrapolate that to every other swing state, and all of a sudden he won the 2020 election, obviously, if that were to happen. And so theoretically, it's still Biden, but it's getting really close, similar to New York, similar to other states. Now, for whatever reason, the whole shift to polling places like New Hampshire and other likely blue states like Minnesota has not really carried across to New Mexico. I think people in the know are probably spending less focus on those states and focusing more north, which, believe what you believe on that basis. But the takeaway from this is that we do not have a poll since last summer. Okay, so basically there's no real indication of Biden doing great in the state. But as of right now, he's winning in the most recent poll by 8. You could see that being as low as maybe a win by 3. Point being is still that he's going to get all the electoral votes from that state. Colorado is almost a sister state to New Mexico insofar as its partisanship, but also the lack of investment by the national media. When we look at the lack of coverage over the election, prospects of either candidate Trump or incumbent Biden, we do see that obviously there's a trend of both states, New Mexico and Colorado, not being well funded. Okay, the most recent poll we have, in fact, is Kennedy versus Trump as a hypothetical versus, which is just ridiculous. Again, we're looking for Biden versus Trump, and they're not providing it. Okay, so we're going back months and still nothing. Now, to be fair, as of 3 months ago, so things are really different now, Biden was winning by about 4 or 5 percentage points by these small, crappy pollsters. Those don't really indicate much. And if you look even further past about 6 months, you'll see that Trump is losing by 6 to Biden, according to Emerson, in a huge poll. And then you'll look at the Progress Now Colorado, which is a Democrat-funded apparatus, and you'll notice that Biden's winning by 8. Now, 8 might seem like a lot, but Biden won the state by over 10 percentage points, if I recall, last election. So even 6 months ago, when the election prospects were closer and more favorable to Joe, he was still underperforming his 2020 level of support, which is not a good sign for his campaign. So as we see the election map really truly opening up in a very, very multiple way, we do see that multiple states that would have otherwise not have been really in contention or really invested in by the Republican Party is now up for grabs. And so now that there's a turning point, no pun intended, you'll notice that there's been more funding for the polls in Virginia, which is great. Now the Commonwealth, as of last week, and again, things are getting even better for Trump. The more we get into real time, you'll notice that as of 8 days ago, Trump in a 1v1 is actually tied with Joe Biden in the state of Virginia, 48 to 48%. This is completely remarkable once you consider a couple of different facts, okay? Fox News as a pollster is not the most favorable to Trump. You might think that that might be the case, but it's more so like the conservatives at Fox are funding liberals to do polls so that when they release their polls, it becomes a little like less biased, at least in perception. That's the idea behind that. And so the liberals that run the poll are obviously not slanting it towards Trump. And so for Donald Trump to have lost the state of Virginia by about 10 percentage points in 2020 and have it even remotely close to even is an incredible sign for the prospects of the former president. And so that's still a tie. So we're going to give that to Joe right now because obviously it looks cooler when they're tied right now. And it's 219 electoral votes for Trump and 226 for Biden. Now, in North Carolina, we do have a pretty sure thing with Trump's prospects. As you can see, Trump is winning by about 5 percentage points in the state with a big poll as of about a week ago, which is to say, of course, that he's killing Biden metaphorically in the polls. So we're going to fill that in very confidently as a red state. And that's ironic as I just misclicked, but Quinnipiac University has another large set of polls for the state of Georgia as of 8 days ago. As you can see, Trump is leading by 5 points in a 1v1, and with RFK and others added on to that in a 5-man race, or I guess 4 men and 1 woman, you'll notice that Trump is winning by an additional 6 points. And so that's an incredible margin. Again, a sure thing win for Donald Trump. Even a couple weeks ago, we do have some Democrat pollsters called Citizens to Save Our Republic, Super PAC. You'll notice that even in these Democratic leading polls, Biden is still losing to Donald Trump by 1 or 2 percentage points. And so what it means is that Trump is very likely to win the state at this point. And things are only getting worse for Joe. Again, this is before his approval rating hit a 37 percentile, which is horrendous. Next up, we have Pennsylvania. As you all know, we have a really close state for about a decade. It's been really close. And what we do notice as of the most recent polling, as of about 10, 12 days ago, is that you'll notice is that Trump is losing to Biden according to some polls, and then the ones right beneath them have Trump winning. And so what's odd is that you have the same organization right here, the Florida Atlantic University poll, okay? And you'll notice that there's 4 different ones with very similar sample sizes, and yet they have different results very slightly, okay? Because in polling in the industry, there's something called a margin of error, where a lot of polls, when you sample 1,000 people, you ought to be able to maybe get some of the results wrong by the order of maybe 2 or 3%. And so it's a give or take. And so what that means is that, of course, we can have Trump winning by 2 by the same pollster, and then you run that same cycle again, and now Biden's winning by 1 or 2. So it's a very dead even sort of affair. But given the fact that these Biden wins are with third-party candidates, and the third parties tending to probably decrease in vote share, it's a very slight win for Donald Trump currently. Next, we have Arizona. As you can see, 8 days ago, we have the Beacon Research poll, and you'll notice that Trump is leading that again by about 5 percentage points. 5 percentage points. That's incredible. Why? Because again, he lost it by 0.1 or whatever it is as of 4 years ago, and in 2020, that was really a downtrend from 2016, truly, where Trump underperformed again McCain and Romney before him, and God forbid George Bush as well. And so he won it by I think like 3 or something. And so for him to win it by 5 8 years later is really incredible when you look at the most recent polling. And so that really holds true there. Now, moving on, we're going to go to Michigan. But before we get to it, like the video and make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, because I'm going to keep on doing this, and I'm going to add little layers of little nuggets. And for you nerds like me that want to know the most about this news, you really need to get into the particulars. And so I'm going to add a new element to this. As y'all can see, Michigan, as of 8 days ago, again, you can see a pattern with June 3rd being a big date. This is really the first crop of solid post-conviction polling. As you can see, Trump lost the state in 2020. He, again, lost. And then 2016, he narrowly won it. That being said, of course, Biden's 3-point victory last time, or was it 2? is being trumped by Donald's 1 point victory. That's about a 4% difference, in fact. And you can see that even with multiple people in the race, you can see that he's still winning. And so that's a solid win for Donald Trump right there in the tally. Now, Wisconsin is a mess. I don't know what the hell's going on here. So as you can see, Biden's winning by a lot in a lot of these polls. Huge problem. And again, this is why you need somebody who knows how the polls work, so that like if you're a layperson, you don't get confused. Okay, so number one, as you can see in most of the polls I've referred to, they've had over 1,000 people responding to them, whereas these only have a sample size of about 300, which again is super below par because you need about 1,000 to get a good sample size. And so the margin of error with the 1,000-man survey is about 2 to 3 percentage points. When you downsize that sample size to about a third of that, it becomes obvious that you can double or triple the margin of error. So when Biden's winning by 7, then all of a sudden you can see how slanted things truly can be. Now, granted, now we look at this. One poll has Trump winning by 1, down by 2, down by 5, down by 7. Now that's ridiculous. Again, so while this is the most recent polling, it really isn't indicative of anything. And again, I will break the trend of this gimmick of the format, because again, the latest poll is bogus. And so I'm just doing you guys a favor of being honest here. The Prime Group, which again is sponsored by the Democrats, have a double the size survey from earlier in the month of May, and you can see that Trump is even or losing by 2. So even the Democratic polls that are a little more decent insofar as survey size is actually a lot more accurate to the truth than is this crop of garbage polls by the Florida Atlantic University Group. It's insane to watch this be done, okay? And for these to be allowed in the aggregate really poisons it. So while Trump is winning North Carolina by 5 or Florida by 10, and you'll see like, oh my God, Biden's winning Wisconsin, this is not really indicative of anything. Again, Biden was leading in Wisconsin in 2020, around the summer therein, by about 17 percentage points in certain polls. That is asinine. Of course, it wasn't even close to the final results. So the final result very well may be Biden plus 1, but God forbid it's Biden plus 7. There is no way. Again, we have a president with an approval rating of less than 40 percentage points. Let's get real here, folks. If he's winning at all, he's winning by the I don't know how many hairs he's got left, but after a Turkish hair transplant, I assume it's not many. And so really, really desperately, he's got to cling on to these polls that are fake, because these are not to be trusted. So I will take these polls over the other ones. Again, look at these from the week before. You can see bigger poll results, as in higher numbers, and you'll see that Trump is doing better, obviously. But I'll give Biden the slight win. But this whole 7% dub bull jive is just that. It's just complete cockamamie. But we're going to get into Nevada. So now to introduce a little bit of a spin to the common, polling in every state poll sort of thing, okay? I want to add my own flavor to it, more so than the others, okay? So again, beyond just the interpretation of whatever is on paper, there needs to be a little bit more of an imbusel of an opinion, in my opinion, again. So when it comes to the state of Nevada, we do have about 6 electoral votes, which is probably one of the smaller states when it comes to the vote count in and of itself. You get outside of Las Vegas, and it's looking a lot more like it's populated by tumbleweeds, the state that is. And so realistically speaking, there might not be that much electoral significance to the state. That being said, I really contest that, because in certain circumstances, it might very well be that Trump wins maybe 1 or 2 of the 6 swing states, and he gets Nevada, and that puts him right at the tie 2269 threshold. And it's also becoming an issue where Nebraska's 2nd district gets influential in the race. That being said, of course, when it comes to Nebraska's 2nd, there really isn't a way to get polls on it, at least not the way that I know how to. And so it's really hard to predict. And so I'm just leaving it blue for now, because that's the way it's been for a while. And so anyway, when it comes to Nevada, we do have Trump leading in the polls as of this month even by about 5 percentage points. That's give or take, given Kennedy, West, and Stein on the ballot. He's still winning by 5 either way. And what's also most impressive is that he's winning by 50 percentage points, so an outright majority, more or less. And so that's an incredible thing, because a Republican has not won Nevada, I believe, since like 2004. And so I was in diapers very easily when this was happening. But again, so a blue state for the past 20 years has been getting closer and closer red due to a shift of the Democrat base, usually Hispanics, culinary workers, union workers. They're trending more Republican. And what's interesting is that Donald Trump proposes an idea where he's going to get he's going to get the service industry and tap into that and say, you know what, I'm not going to tax your tips. Now, that's the majority of income for a ton of workers. And so whether you're working at an Applebee's in a strip mall in Vegas, or whether you're working in a casino to some capacity as a waitress, any of the sort of thing, which again employs a ton of people, tens of thousands of votes are at stake, if not hundreds of thousands. You see that such a big policy proposal is not only uncontroversial, incontroversial, but also greatly supported by the base in Nevada. And so this makes the trend even more succinct, even more solidified. So concrete infused in the veins of the Republican Party in Nevada when it comes to being strong and just being fertilized. And this public policy proposal is really perfect. And so I think that's a little extra to this video. I know some other states I could commentate more on, but not to waste y'all's time, this is the final result here. Trump 302, Biden Harris 236. Again, I disagree with Wisconsin, obviously, because Wisconsin is really finicky when it comes to the polling industry. That being said, I'm following some of the video guidelines, so we're going mostly off of the polls and not my own opinion. Again, when it comes to New Hampshire also sparse in polling. That's been fixed recently. But also Maine. Also, you can't really get polling on that. So when it comes to the specific electoral districts, I'm just going off of the last year's election. And so anyways, I'll see y'all on the next one. I'm going on vacation. You should see about 4 or 5 pre-recorded videos. I'm super busy, but we're going to try to hammer them in. So see y'all on the next one. Adios.